Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. I'm not saying thank God it's Monday because the team that I did not want to win the Super Bowl that I predicted would win the Super Bowl by exactly the amount of points that I predicted they would win. I said 4 points and they won by 4, right, Russ?
They did.
Yeah, so
right.
I said no wagering, but hopefully you didn't listen to me and you wagered because then, I don't know what the spread was because I don't know.
No, mine came up short too. I thought it'd be on the over. 47.5 came under. Yeah, you never know with these games. I mean, the fun thing is, like, first, if I break down the commercials, I didn't think this year's crop of commercials were very good at all.
You know what? You want to know something? It's really weird because I was like switching channels, watching like other things during the commercial breaks because they were so long. Because obviously they're trying to cram in. The commercial breaks in Super Bowls are 2 minutes long because they do more commercials. They're trying to squeeze them in unless it's like a timeout or an injury. They squeeze in as many commercials because they're getting millions of dollars a minute or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus spent $7 million on a 30-second commercial. I mean,
he can afford.
I don't know if he can afford that, but
yes, he can.
Apparently, he can.
Yeah, no, actually, I saw a bunch of them before the Super Bowl, and one of the ones that I thought was like really annoying, even though I like her, is the Jenna Ortega Doritos Dynamita commercial. Yeah. I like her. I just thought like two septuagenarians in carts chasing after some guy who got the last bag of Doritos. I mean, come on. I mean,
you know what the problem with is every Super Bowl Doritos decide they have to reinvent the shape of the Doritos because people are bored with them. One year it was a cone shape. Now it looks like a Cheeto. It's like, how about you just stick to Doritos? Like,
no, they can't. And because Peter, they've explored every friggin' flavor of Doritos out there. I mean, it used to be just nacho cheese. Then they went nacho cheese and taco. Then they went nacho cheese taco and Cool Ranch. Now there's, salsa verde and this. And you can tell I eat a lot of Doritos. And now it's like and curly cues and this. Would you please friggin' stop?
Mike, think about all the ones that never made it to market.
They go to Canada.
No.
Yeah.
But in Canada, I mean, because obviously I'm 10 miles from the Canadian border, and I go up there to buy my my cans of club soda. Hey, I'm not embarrassed. I can't. All I can get is the little mixer cans of club soda in the States. So I go up to Canada to get the 10 ounce.
It's like a club soda TED Talk now.
So, but I go up there and they have dill pickle, cheddar cheese flavor, ketchup, which is disgusting. They've
been around a while. Once in a while, you see really weird ones, and they always seem to end up in Canada before the States. I don't know if that's true. I just have noticed that. I will tell you, the one commercial that I thought had an impact was the one that had said how few female athletes actually play sports. They usually quit by the age of 15, and it was a high percentage. And that really caught my eye. I was like, wow, that's really kind of sad. So that was something that caught my eye. The rest, I didn't really care about. I mean, some were witty. I know which one was
that? I did not see.
One with Aubrey Plaza was pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't see that one. I did not see the Danny DeVito Schwarzenegger steak.
I saw that one. Yeah, I saw some criticism about the one about making fun of a language. I thought was kind of an odd.
It was an odd thing to fall back on for that.
I mean, I don't know, because it kind of played into the Twins movie and stuff.
Yes, but it was pronunciation. It's
so I think it'd be a lot more offensive. Like, I think the point was like, we're really making fun of a guy who has an accent. We're really using a person with an accent to make fun of how they pronounce English. And I think the whole point is that's been part of Schwarzenegger's shtick. His whole career is how he says things.
Right.
So I didn't really take offense to that.
No, I didn't take offense. I just thought it was kind of like weird.
He was in on the joke, so that's
he was on a joke. I really like the Dunkin' Donuts one. I thought that was good.
That was pretty good.
No, I saw the Affleck commercial that when he had the chain with the donut. Was that the only one? Because I don't know if there was.
That's the only one I saw.
Well, they were allegedly supposed to be selling those tracksuits today, but I guess they're not.
Wow.
That would be funny if they were, because Burger King has done that, where they've sold some outrageous clothing just to see if people will wear it. And, you figure if Ben Affleck wears it, maybe somebody in Massachusetts will wear it.
I think there was a little bit, they were a little bit short on creativity in the commercials in general, some of the themes and stuff like that, right? Like, I don't think we're in a golden period of past Super Bowls of commercials.
Well, I'll say
the Super Bowls are better now, and the commercials are worse.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say
it used to be the opposite.
I do know this. They were extremely conscious of not being offensive this year. Like, Bud Light put in so much more money this year after the whole transgender Dylan Mulvaney thing that cost them like billions of dollars in market share. They made sure that they stayed on the straight and narrow. It was Peyton Manning. It was
Dana White. They got all the political spectrum in there.
Yeah. So they wanted to bring the red states back in. And I don't know. I mean, I don't drink Bud Light. It's urine. It's, to me, I don't like it.
Yeah. I'm not a fan no matter what happens.
So, they never had me before, so they're not going to have me now. But and just the game.
Game was great. I mean, my whole takeaway of the game is
the game was a bore until the fourth quarter.
Well, but I mean, but it was a defensive battle, and they were two really good defenses. Look, there's the argument that San Fran played a really great game. They did, because they had a fluke ball go over a guy's leg that KC got on the 20 and then immediately scored. Right? That's a fluke. There was nothing San Fran did wrong on that play.
The blocked extra point.
And they blocked the extra point. That's on the Chiefs. But what we learned is what we learn in a lot of these, that people were wrong that they said Brock Purdy is just this like game manager. No, he's a little better than that. But what we also learned is if you give Mahomes the ball last, you're going to lose.
Okay.
Well, okay. Now,
that's the problem.
Russ, I realize that they changed the overtime rules in regular season. Now, we were having this discussion at the arena today.
Yeah.
I admit I got it wrong, because I thought if San Francisco scored a touchdown there, the game was over with.
No, I didn't think that. But
what I thought, Mike, I didn't realize it had changed to. Actually, what's funny is the NFL rules are more looking like the CFL ones, where each team gets a chance.
Right. But here's the thing: I didn't think that changed. I thought it was the time factor of 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. And the interesting thing was, and this is where even a lot of commentators got it wrong. So I think the NFL is a little to blame for this, and certainly San Fran for not telling their guys. But had that pass play to a former Jet, McCall Hardeman, not happened, it would have been another quarter of overtime. But a lot of people were thinking, like, if overtime runs out, like, that's it. And it's like, no, they're not going to have the Super Bowl be a tie. But we've never seen a 2 overtime football game in a Super Bowl. We've never seen that, and that almost happened.
So and I don't believe the idea that give the Mahomes the ball last, you're going to lose. There's no causation or correlation to that other than
there isn't. Go back and look at all the other games that he's won in the playoffs. Most of them end up that way.
Right. But I don't think because you chose to get the ball first.
No. I'm not saying that.
But that's the argument that's going around.
Okay.
Is that
I'm not arguing that.
49ers should have elected a kick
as
opposed to receive. Again, you look at the game-winning play. This is what Andy Murray does better than anyone else.
Andy Reid, you mean?
Andy Reid, in the league. He makes teams make mistakes.
He does.
The coverage was blown on a simple offset motion pattern that came back that switched the outside linebacker and the DB, and it was done.
Yeah, and they showed him the linebacker trailed the other guy.
Exactly, and it was done. That is what makes Andy Reid so good, in that he empowers his people to do things like that, to be creative. They practice it to a T to sell it, and he has a quarterback who understands the importance of creativity.
You see, now you hit on something. So 2 things. Had Donovan McNabb been as good as Mahomes, they'd have won with Andy Reid in Philly. That's obvious now. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, so what I really meant was Shanahan. Look, this is I want to say the weird nature of any coach with the last name of Shanahan, because I'm usually not a fan. I don't mind the younger one, but don't go back and tell me you were going to go for it on 4th and 3 because you were getting stoned, and there's no question you had to go kick a field goal. They were not going to gain a yard on the next play, and they'd have gotten no point.
Well, the problem. Oh, you mean on the 4th and 3 in OT?
Yes.
Yeah, because
there's no upside to going for it.
Well, yeah,
but he was talking about going for it if he had known the rules.
But based on the rules,
That I didn't hear.
Right, based on the rules that apparently are in place now. Yeah, it made no sense. Other than the fact that you know that Mahomes was going to march down the field and get at least.
Well, if you know Mahomes is going to march down the field, your problem isn't with your offense. Your problem's with your defense.
and that's where Shanahan got mad, and you saw him getting mad at the defense because honestly, there was a 4th and 1 play, and what if there's a fumble on that play or it's a low snap and it goes back 15 yards and Mahomes doesn't get that first down, they lose.
And that exactly, and that's where I always say, I come back as much as it pains me because I still have, I have lingering PTSD from years of being the Chiefs and the Seahawks being the AFC West. Yeah. Of even though the Seahawks are a far better team, that.
Tell Vinny Testaverde that.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole idea is that it pains me to say it, but it goes back to Andy Reid and what and this is what Andy Reid does better, I think, than so many other coaches. He understands the strengths of his key players. So he builds things that allow them to be great.
Yeah.
Holy shit. What a concept.
Kelsey was legit pissed off at him.
Yeah.
And
bumped into him. I mean,
I know.
If Andy Reid had been an official, he would have been kicked out of the game.
Yes.
Because he bumped into him. Just one thing, and of course, Russ, this is the nature of a sports fan, and just like you in the AFC Championship game when the Jets are up, what was it, 10-0 with that
10-0 against Denver. Denver. Spence had the touchdown for the Jets, a recovery in the end zone, a nobody.
Right. Yeah, so just like you relive that, I will relive for this year until the beginning of next season the fact that the Bills were down 27-24 with 2nd down and 9 on the Chiefs' 20-yard line with 2 minutes to go and missed the field goal and lost the game. And that's, to my mind, the closest that the Chiefs came to losing because the Bills could have simply run the clock down, scored the touchdown, and the Chiefs were done, and they didn't do it.
It's all about execution, and a lot of times.
Yeah, no. I mean, I hate them. I hate them more than I ever hated the Patriots.
Oh, stop it!
I do. I friggin' hate them. I hate them with a passion.
I'm sorry that you fargan hate them, Mike.
It's Fargan War. Unfortunately. We didn't get the positive out of that game yesterday because Kelsey didn't retire and fat Andy Reid didn't retire. So, they're going to be back next year and hopefully the Bills can beat them then. But yeah, whatever. All right, let's get to something that I'm truly unbiased and unemotional about. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, February 12th, the year of our Lord, 2024.
I'm Pete Tessier, joining you from Winnipeg.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology and NHLDraftBuzz.com.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com, where we'll be talking Morgan Rielly and all Morgan Rielly the next 60 minutes. No, not kidding. We'll talk about that the first 15 minutes, and then we'll move on. But
we'll try.
We'll try. But we have to start with that because that engulfed hockey media and the hockey world and social media, and now has been perpetuated through Super Bowl Sunday onto Monday and Tuesday, because that is when Morgan Rielly will be traveling to the NHL offices in New York City for an in-person hearing for the incident.
What day is the hearing? Sorry.
Tuesday.
He's traveling today.
He's traveling today. It's Tuesday, which he's obviously going to be suspended for at least the game because
so he's not going to play against the Flyers.
No. Well, okay, but let's discuss first. Let me show the incident here as I share the screen.
Exhibit A.
Okay, so this is on a loop. So window. There we go. And okay, here we go. Okay, so it's a small window here, but here is Ridley Gregg with a slap shot from 5 feet away, and Morgan Rielly takes offense. And if I could slow it down, which I can't, but I've watched it about 5,000 times. Okay, the contact, and this matters. The contact was shoulder, and then it rode up the shoulder pad and hit him right on the jaw, on the side of the jaw. And Gregg went down. He appeared uninjured. Rielly was directed directly to the Leaf bench into the locker room. There was a scrum afterward, a little rustling about, but nothing else came of it. He gets a 5-minute for cross-checking and a game misconduct. It took the league until about 2:00 in the afternoon before they finally said there's going to be a hearing with the Department of Player Safety and specified an in-person hearing, which means
minimum 5 games.
Minimum of 5 games. And Elliot Friedman did the research, so I have to credit him. The only time that a player has gotten less than 6 games for an in-person hearing, I think he said it was 2015, and it was Dmitry Kulikov, who I think at that point was with the Jets. And he got an in-person hearing, and it was 5 games. So every time it's 6 or more, which, and I will put my personal opinion here first, and I'll let you go, and then I'll respond to that, which I believe is patently friggin' absurd. It is an absolute joke that play is going to be a 6-game suspension. It doesn't matter who the player is in terms of the importance to the team, because obviously Morgan Rielly is probably the most important or second most important player on the Leafs. It is what the offense was and what it should be penalized for. Now, okay, Peter, you go first, then Russ, and then I'll respond.
You know what? I had a lot to say about this when it happened, and I used the Dale Hunter equivalent and things like that. Okay, here's one thing that really started to come out and about over time is things. If your position is, and take Rielly out of it, if your position is player A did this and got 3 games, and now player B does something that is arguably not as flagrant, but different context, they should only get less or whatever, then you're missing the problem. And then I had to come back to this. You have to think like the Department of Player Safety, which is a very difficult thing to do because there's not a lot of thought that goes on there. There is no correlated or direct line between what something happened in the past to what's going to happen now with the way they measure out punishment. It's done on a case-by-case basis, and there's no precedent. There's no common law precedent practice here like you would see in the courts. You can't think of it that way. They may cite things, there may be talk about it, but it doesn't add up. So if you want to have a conversation, and let's go back and say we have the Zadorov hit in Pittsburgh, and then we have the Dillon one, and one's 3 and one's 2, and have a conversation around that, I'm totally willing to go there.
Yeah, no.
But if you're going to say, well, that's 3 games, therefore Rielly didn't do anything as bad as what Dillon did, he shouldn't get any more. I can't go there because they're not related, because nothing is ever related. So you have to look at Rielly's hit in the isolation of what it was and not compare to Perron or not compare to this. It's what's happening right now at that then their moment and how it was contextualized in the game. That is the only way I can make sense of how the Department of Player Safety operates, because it is all over the map. And this one's going to be part of being all over the map, right or wrong.
And Peter, that's my critique of this situation, because honestly, Russ, the Department of Player Safety has their head up their ass. They really do. There is no consistency whatsoever. And I will show you something that is similar, something that involved the Maple Leafs, something that got a 2-game suspension. Okay. And this was less than 2 years ago. So it's not like it's ancient history like Dale Hunter and Pierre Turgeon. And I know. But
last week is ancient history, the Department of Player Safety.
Sure. But okay, so this is from the Heritage Classic. It was 2022. I was at the game in Hamilton, outdoor game between the Sabres and the Leafs, and Rasmus Dahlin and Matthews are going at it in front of the net. Dahlin pushes Matthews, Matthews pushes it, and then Matthews cross-checks him to the neck and head, okay? Not shoulder, neck and head. And for that, he got 2 games. So, Russ, I mean, that's my comparison here.
But Mike, okay, you go, Russ.
And then, Peter, you go back.
I'm in Peter's camp that there really are never any. What's happened here is, so Ridley Gregg broke the unwritten rule, right? Once you break the unwritten rule, that's when a lot of Maple Leafs and probably other players went in and told, made their calls, told their representatives, told other players, when Gregg comes back, forget it. It's all bets are off. We're going to destroy this guy because of what he did. What Austin Matthews did and Dahlin happens every game. Ridley Gregg did something that nobody really does because they know better not to do it. Okay.
Right.
So now we get
he's a punk is what he is. And that was a punk move.
Right. So we get past the unwritten rule part, whether you like that or not.
Right.
So when Morgan Rielly is in the office, the first thing you're going to say to him is, listen, we know you meant to do it. Why did you use your stick? Why did you feel like you needed to use your stick? Because he didn't. All he had to do was go up to Ridley Gregg, turn him around, drop his gloves, and fight him. They both would have gotten a fighting major, and we wouldn't be talking about it today, but he used his stick. That is the problem, and that's why he's going to get 5 games.
And the play was over. He was skating away.
Right.
And he could have even been he wasn't, but he could have been unaware, and he also may not have had as much time to react.
Yeah, he turned around and he saw him coming. But now, okay, saying that he used the stick, fine. I get what you're saying. But first of all, he knew what he did was going to elicit a response because Gregg is an antagonist. He's, that's his shtick. He wants to be, a fire starter, a rat, whatever. Fine. If whatever you have to do to stay in the NHL, that's fine. That's from his point of view, fine. But there are going to be consequences to your actions. I'm not going to say anything about the code because whatever. I mean, but there was a punk move, and he knew it was going to elicit a response. Rielly did what he thought was justified. The team was being shown up. Okay. You could say, well, you want to prevent him from being shown up. Don't let him score an empty net goal. Okay. Are you going to start bench clearing brawls every time an empty net goal is scored? Of course not. But that was nobody takes slap shots from 5 feet away when it's an empty net goal.
So, but again, if it was so egregious and offensive, refs could have just issued an unsportsmanlike penalty, right?
Yeah, right. But okay, but this. But
they didn't.
No, but this is the thing, right? They didn't. This is the thing, Peter. From the perspective, and okay, and I think Friedman and Jeff Merrick talked about this on their podcast, and they're accurate and right about this. Of course, everybody who wears blue and white thinks that Morgan Rielly is a hero today because he stuck up for the team. The team was being shown up, and he showed Ridley Gregg. And everybody who's a Senators fan loves what he did. And basically, they pissed on the feet of the Leafs, and they beat them 3 or 4 games. From my perspective, the Maple Leafs should be upset at themselves because they let one of the worst teams in the league beat them 3 or 4 games. If that's the difference between you making and missing the playoffs, you have nobody to blame but yourself. But I do think that Rielly stuck up for the team. But here is my issue. And I say, and I can point to 3 instances here, 3 where the Maple Leafs, because they're the Maple Leafs and because they're in Toronto and because they get so much attention, and we all, everybody is sick of the attention that the Leafs get. Okay, there's a positive to it and then there's a negative to it. Do you remember the Jason Spezza knee to Neil Pionk? A guy who never got suspended once in his NHL career. He was coming to the defense of his teammate, and it wasn't purposeful. He ended up kneeing Pionk in the head as Pionk is falling down. He got 6 games. Nowhere else does Jason Spezza get 6 games for that thing, but because he's a Leaf, he got 6 games.
I'm not buying it.
Oh, okay. And the other one, Russ,
Mike, if you're gonna
let me give you the second one, then I'll let you go. The second one, and this is ancient history. Ty Domi, not the Niedermeyer one. He deserved everything he got on that one. But Ty Domi sucker punching Ulf Samuelsson. He got 8 games for that. Every friggin' player in the NHL wanted to pat him on the back and buy him a drink.
True, but it still doesn't make it right.
The reason that they
Mike,
they're getting suspended as much as they are is because it was an act of retribution and it was a Leaf. I will say to him, blue in the face.
It's the act of retribution that you're right about, not the Leaf part.
Yeah, not the Leaf part.
Retribution.
I could, you can go back then 12 years and you look at when, what's his name, Colin Campbell was running everything and nothing was getting done when someone did something against Boston. Right. And, or when Boston's like, you can have all the tinfoil toque things you want right now. I mean, maybe Taylor Swift hates the Leafs. I don't know. But the point, the point here, Mike, is you're trying to correlate things that you can't do it. And when those things happened, it was a totally different regime running the Department of Player Safety.
And it's ironic, Peter, that 2 former heads of the Department of Player Safety had something to do with the Leafs. Burke was a GM, and current president Brendan Shanahan it was the head of the Department of Player Safety. Isn't like they're getting favorable treatment from the NHL and George Barros.
But Dan B has it right here, because he said starting a fight in the final minutes is a suspension, right? And yeah, it is. But that's the point. The point is, if Rielly had done it just as a straight-up fight, it would be a 1-game suspension, and then Greg would be getting suspended, which I wouldn't be against either, just for being a dipshit. And that would be fine.
Okay, exactly. Russ, you're right. And here's the other point about this. This shows you sort of how brilliant Greg was, because he is now living in every Leafs fan's head rent-free. Mm-hmm. He's taken out Rielly for a minimum of 5 games, all because he hot dogged a bit. So let's go back to the other thing. For the last 25 years, everyone in Canada has been force-fed the Leafs on Saturday night. The Leafs fans come out in droves wherever you see them in Canada.
Right.
They drink, they cheer, they do, and they have a blast because it's become such a long-running joke that they can barely make it out of the first round of the playoffs. They've had no Stanley Cup success, even though the Jets and the Canucks and the Oilers haven't either in 40 years, or the Canucks never, and all these things, right? Okay, even though that happens. But the Leafs, because of the legion of fans and everything that's been pumped down their throat, when they come to town, it's a big night.
Yeah. And
Greg comes in, they beat them, they're 3-1. He does a slap shot from 5 feet out for the fans.
Yeah.
And if you're a Leafs player and you somehow and by the way, great back check, Rielly. Because he didn't do anything. Like he should have, you know what? In actual Austin Matthews should have come. No, he was standing right there.
He wasn't even in the frame. He was too.
There's a great photo of when the puck's going in and he's standing at the blue line. Like, you know what? If I'm Sheldon Keefe, I should have went out and cross-checked Rielly for being so useless on the back check. But that's a whole other story. The point here, I think, that you got to get to is this is a big thing for everyone else. Mm-hmm. And if you don't want to be a part of it, you don't want to have the hate in it. You don't want it. Don't play in Toronto. Well, that's the other part of it. We've talked about the pros and cons of being in Toronto, the microscope. Yeah. That's part of it too.
Well, okay.
And you're going to have to live with that. So you know what? I don't care if Quinn Hughes did it, if Tanev did it, if Darnell Nurse did it. Nurse would miss the net. But, if Pionk did it, or if Sherrod did it in Montreal.
If Brendan Gallagher did it, he'd shoot it in his own net.
Yeah. I don't care if anyone did it or not. We're in the entertainment business. It's entertaining to those that are there.
Well,
It's part of it. And it was a big moment, regardless of whether you feel about it. If your mindset after someone does something like that
I want
is to go cross-check them, then let's do it after every celly.
Well,
he wasn't even he celebrated before he scored. And you know what? I've seen Matthews going like this to the crowd.
Well, no,
I'd love it if someone came up and debilitated him because it's hot dogging.
I want to get to this. I want to get to this because I'm sorry. The celebration thing, everybody's doing it. Nobody, Peter, no one is taking a slap shot from 5 feet away on an empty net goal. It was an up yours. And you know what? Honestly, to the fans in Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Montreal, and Ottawa who have a problem with Leaf fans invading your building, and this goes for Buffalo too. If you don't like it, buy the friggin' tickets. Sure. That's the only way you're keeping them out. Buy the tickets and don't sell them because they're going to buy them.
But they're going to buy them. But that's fine. You want people in the building.
And here's the other thing, okay?
Okay, go ahead, Russ.
And this is the other part. And you know what? If the league had fined him, I would be okay. What Ryan Reeves said, again, about what would have happened to Greg when he came into the league when he was playing.
Right.
Yeah, we get it, Ryan. The league is changing.
The league has changed.
The league has changed.
Yeah.
You're now talking in past terms that have no bearing on any of these guys. Right. And you're basically saying that this kind of aggression is good. That's what he said. He was okay with that. And I'm never okay with a guy using a stick, ever.
No. But
Russ, he was okay with it.
Russ, like I said, if you look at, and this will end it after this. If you look at the actual events and look at the head, he was basically using his stick to cross-check him on his shoulder into the boards after, and the stick went up, rode up the shoulder, and hit him. So, okay, you're gonna get suspended for that. My problem is the double standard of this league. The Zadorov elbow on Lucas Raymond was predatory. And I like Zadorov as a player. You know, doing the stuff that he does is like what Pronger used to do. He'll pay the suspension for a couple. Basically, he'll teach everybody to keep their head up when Zadorov is on the ice. Because if you do that, you're putting your life in your own hands. But it was predatory. He came up the middle. He hit him with the elbow on the jaw. And that got 2 games. Why in the hell does that get 2 games and Rielly gets 6? Because it was a retribution hit after being shown up.
And he had other options. My whole thing is
he could have just went over and just said, "You're a fucking dick."
Right.
These guys are chirping each other all game, every game. You could have went over. Next shift in the thing, they could have put Reeves out just to skate around and act like a moron.
But it was
but the whole point is, you could have just embarrassed the guy in the game afterwards and said, hey, we lost, but at least we don't have to do bush league things like that. This guy's a chump. And then you go nail him the next game.
Here's the whole thing. You're not heroic if you use your stick. I'm sorry. Why use your stick? You want to be heroic? Go over and challenge the guy to a fight. If he bothered the Leafs' honor, that's the way you do it. That's the right way to do it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was the last game of Toronto-Ottawa this season.
Yeah. Well, he knew that too. Greg's not an idiot.
Yeah, so this is going to fester until next year. But
I'm going to give you the other thing.
Let me finish what I was going to say. The one thing that happened after the Darlene Matthews incident, because my complaint, Russ, when it comes to Buffalo versus Toronto. It's a one-sided rivalry. The Sabres work themselves up into a lather like it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, and the Leafs are like, oh, by the way, because it's not that big of a deal to them. It's just a regular game. But to the Sabres, who've missed the playoffs 13 straight years, when they play here in March, the Sabres will get up for that game because it's the Leafs, and they will get up in the game in Toronto in early March. The last few years, Toronto, Ottawa has been Battle of Ontario, and this is Alfredson days. This is back to Tucker and Alfredson. I'm telling you right now, the Leafs will be a much tougher team next year when this comes around. There's a lot of talent on that Ottawa team, but Ridley Gregg better keep his head up because somebody's going to go after him.
Well, whatever, that's fine. But all I'm saying is the other underlying thing here that nobody wants to talk about or mention is the fact that if Rielly misses 5 games, the Leafs are going to lose points in the standings at an important time of the year. And you know what? Nobody should feel bad for them. Nobody.
Well,
Rielly took a calculated risk.
He did.
And he knew this. Like, he may not have thought this was going to happen, but you know what? That's the risk you take after the game. You skate up beside him, you give him a few words, and off you go. To go up and even shove him into the shoulder, like, and you know, the joke here is like, well, God, he can't even cross-check a guy in the shoulder right. Like, I mean,
could have just face-washed him. Like, he could
have just gotten in front of him,
right,
blowing some of his bad Leaf breath on him, and off you go. Like, it's again,
and of course the Ottawa Senators Twitter feed then made Greg the player of the game, and it's an old
awesome
job. So this is good. Yeah,
we are in the entertainment business here,
right?
Yeah, like, okay. It's going to be entertaining when somebody punches Greg's lights out.
But you know what? They made fun of it. How you know what? Vancouver had to live through a whole playoffs where basically everyone turned themselves against them. And then in 2012, for everyone else in Canada, you're welcome. From the
last couple of years, yeah.
Brad Marchand's speed bag lives in eternity. Somebody's running that on a loop right now. Anyway, let's move off of this. So, Peter, I just want to ask something about the Jets.
Yeah,
I mean, the last time I looked, they'd lost 6 games in a row.
5
games in a row, which is bizarre because, they were the hottest team in the league. They lost the 2 games to the Leafs before the All-Star break. They made the trade for Monahan, and now all of a sudden they're ice cold. I mean, what's going on?
So they had a bit of a turnaround against the Penguins, although they were up in shots, but the Penguins kind of came back a little bit. I think that had more to do with the power play. I didn't look at the 5 versus 5 shots. Russ I think you were at the game in Philadelphia. If I remember when the Jets were there.
Pathetic for 2 periods.
Yeah, and and part of the problem with the Jets is, one thing I will say, whatever Philly did to understand a few things and make some adjustments, they did it well, and bravo, because it was good. Like, it was smart strategy. And that's the problem. This is what happened last year around the same time, end of January. They kind of fell off a cliff. They kind of limped into the playoffs in the wild card spot.
A lot of shots that game.
And
they did.
Again, teams adjust, teams get better, teams improve. Jets got hot. They're playing really well. But an injury here, a thing here. That's when the coaching staff has to make adjustments, and they have to change tactics as well. They changed a little bit of their 2-1-2 forecheck, and it hasn't been as effective. What was
inexplicable, Pete. I thought they were going to play Hellebuck that game. Why they played Brossoit, I have no clue. And he gave up really one horrific goal and one that wasn't.
I think he needed some work, if I remember correctly. It was just the way it goes. So for that point, right, like, I think there was a little. I think they could have easily beaten Pittsburgh, probably 4-1. Monahan had basically an open breakaway and hit the crossbar. He had Jari beat. Jari played very well in Winnipeg on Saturday night. So I mean, they're going through some of those trials and tribulations. I think the biggest problem is with the Jets. You have Kyle Connor, who really is he's a goal scorer. That's all he is. He's a goal scorer. He's not a back checker. He's made progress, but it's still a long ways to go. You want him getting the puck, but to do it, you're going about it the wrong way. And I think that's where the adjustment has to come. You had a very effective line with Ehlers, Scheifele, and Velarde before Scheifele was injured. Bones hasn't put it back yet. He needs to, and it's okay to have Connor on the second line. It's okay to do that. You're not, it's not a God-given.
Pretty frustrated though right now.
He is frustrated, but he's frustrated for a few reasons. I don't think it's where it is. I think things just aren't working right, and he's got to work his way back into this too, right? And that's a little bit on him. He's got to sort of find some things as well, some timing, some things. He was out a while. I think he'll get there, but the coaching staff needs to not, like, Rick Bowness has this, well, he's the next man up mentality. And I don't think that's a very progressive way of looking at things. I think you have
at least
to look
not
at
in that market. It didn't work for him last year.
no, Russ, and you even saw my tweet about this, is that
Yeah.
when you see the exact same thing happening again, you can't be ignorant to and try the same thing to fix the problem again.
No, you're right about that.
And that's where it's going right now. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, I think they're playing San Jose on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. So hopefully they kind of break through a little bit and get moving again. But yeah, they need to, because the first round coming out of the Central is going to be ugly.
Now, we are 3.5 weeks away from the deadline. The deadline is Friday, March 8th. We've seen the two big center moves. We saw Lindholm to Vancouver. We saw Monahan to Winnipeg. Things have slowed a little bit. Nothing have major consequences happened since, but probably it gets going, I would say, probably a week before the deadline, because these teams are so tight up against the cap. They're going to want to bank as much cap space as possible, unless they're making deals with teams who are out of it. Well, one team that's out of it is the Buffalo Sabres, and they seem to be the epicenter of all rumors now and all interest now, because they have 6 unrestricted free agents. Not anybody of like major consequence, but players that contending teams might want to add as a depth forward. Guys like Zemgus Girgensons or Eric Robinson. Eric Johnson, the defenseman, is somebody that supposedly Vancouver and a few other contending teams might be interested in. Right-hand shot, big guy, physical, won a cup. But Russ, I mean, we talked about it on Off the Post. There seems to be something there between the Sabres and the Philadelphia Flyers, possibly. Now, there wasn't a Philly scout on Saturday at the game between the Sabres and the Blues, but there were 10 NHL teams represented, including Brad Treliving from the Leafs was there for that game. But the Flyers were not represented, but there was a Sabre scout in Philadelphia, and that has just sprung up a bunch of, okay, what fits here? And a guy like Peyton Krebs does fit in terms of what the Sabres might be willing to trade and what the Flyers might be interested in.
Right. I mean, my whole feeling was, I'm not sure the Flyers were, like, I saw the scout there, and I was like, okay, let me start thinking about this. Had no inside info. Obviously, I asked you about usage of Krebs because I haven't watched a lot of Sabres lately.
Right.
And you filled me in on that. And I'm like, Krebs seems more like the guy than Middlestat, because I can't see the Flyers getting him and then having to pay him. And I also think they won't trade Cam York, and that's who they'll ask for Middlestat.
Right.
But the Flyers have Igor Zamula, has a lot of NHL experience this year, has played really well, who is a good young defenseman. And then that's what made me think. You put him and Krebs in a deal, you work something else out, and you probably have a deal. And that's where I was thinking when I tweeted it. And then we talked about it a little bit more on Off the Post. And it didn't – look, a lot of teams were interested in Peyton Krebs in the draft. Why? Because he was a fast center who could be a good playmaker. A lot of things have happened since then and now. An Achilles injury, being on in Vegas where they weren't going to use him much. Then he gets traded. He got used a little better last year. His usage stinks this year. He's 23. There's a lot of upside there still with Peyton Krebs. And the Flyers need a third-line center. And he could fill that bill. He could fit it. Because honestly, if the Flyers trade Lawton or if Lawton goes back to the wing, Paling is better set as a fourth-line center, not a third-line center. So Krebs could do something. And what's funny is most Flyers fans agreed. It got a lot of views. And there were a few that were like, well, why would we want a guy that we're looking for upside because he hasn't done it yet? And I was thinking, well, one thing is cheaper on the cap.
Thank you.
Two thing is that's exactly how you got Owen Tippett, because otherwise you never would have gotten Owen Tippett if he wasn't the same for the same reasons. That's how you get guys sometimes.
Right.
And that's and to me it makes sense for them.
Peter, the Sabres are in a situation, and Elliott reported on this on Saturday, but I've known this for a while in terms of a guy like Middlestat. He's going to set a career high right now. He had 59 points last year. He's probably on a pace to exceed that this year. He's making $2.5 million last year of a 3-year bridge deal. He's a restricted free agent with arb rights. Based on 2 60-point seasons, he's probably going to get about $5 million on a settlement or a 1-year deal leading into unrestricted free agency. Friedman said, and like I said, and I've been saying for a while, this team basically needs a hand grenade thrown into the locker room. There's something, not that it's dysfunctional, not that it's like the bad karma or anything like that. You have a lot of the same type of players playing the same type of hockey. Don Granato, their coach, has been saying, the inconsistency, lack of compete in certain instances where they have 48 shots against Dallas and can't beat Ottinger, but Ottinger was out of his mind, and then they mail in the third period against St. Louis to the point that he was disgusted in the postgame. The inconsistency of effort and the fact that last year they were scoring almost 300 goals a year, and this year when they asked them to play better defensively, they are, but at the cost of their offense, which is virtually non-existent at home. They're 27th in the league in terms of goals for at home. And, you have to walk and chew gum at the same time in this league to be successful. And the way this team is currently constructed, they can't do it. So something has to change. And they're supposedly looking to make trades, but they don't want to trade now for future. They want now for now.
And I think that's a bad recipe at the trade deadline in their position, because the teams who want their players, who are going to want to deal with them, want their now,
right?
And they don't want to give up their future because it's a different value proposition. Here's the thing: is you said about the lob a grenade in there, Mike. One of the things you have to look at in a group of people in any kind of organization is, does everyone like success? But you need one or two people who hate failure more than they like success. And you can always pull people along, but you're always going to need someone who's going to push at the back because they hate being behind.
They had one of those guys, Peter. His name was Jack Eichel.
Right, but the rest of the package there.
It's true. That's how he is.
But what went wrong there then, Mike?
The rest of the package there, in terms of Eichel, in terms of getting along with teammates, in terms of him being frustrated with the organization and them spinning their wheels. I mean, this team has missed the playoffs for 13 straight years.
That's a big thing.
Yeah, and Jack Eichel was, Brian O'Reilly begged out of Buffalo because it was a losing culture. Jack Eichel couldn't get the surgery that he needed. He gets traded, he has the surgery, and he wins the Stanley Cup. Evander Kane. Well, should I say it anymore? Just have to say Evander Kane, Sam Reinhart, Rasmus Ristolainen. I mean, you've got this now.
Right. So for the guy in the chat room, Mike, who said, "Well, how come the tanking hasn't worked for the Sabres?" It's because the guys they originally tanked for are all gone.
Yeah. Okay. So now you have the group from the second tank. You've locked up Cousins, who they talked about this today at the rink. Cousins and Dahlin over the last couple games. Cousins was so frustrated after not scoring against St. Louis that he went down the tunnel and threw the stick like a javelin. Dahlin got stoned by Ottinger. It was a stick save. He went up into the net. Dahlin, after the puck goes out, the net comes off the net. He catches the puck and fires it at the back of the net, frustrated, like spiking it. So there's outward frustration at how they're not having
right.
success.
So there's two things that could fix that. Either the coach fixes that, or they have to get a player. Not Kyle Okposo, nice guy, but he can't lead on the ice as far as scoring and otherwise to handle those guys and to tell them, listen, I've been there. They don't have that guy. And so that's where you have to look at management and say, you can do a little more. And then this is where, honestly, if I'm Kevin Adams, I am doing all the eggs I can with this team, because if they all come up bad, then I'm pushing Don Granato into the president's spot and I'm getting a different coach. It doesn't matter if he's a cheap guy. If the players are not responding to him, and I find this out in the exit interviews, you can't ignore it. It doesn't matter how much you're paying him.
Yeah, Russ, you bang on.
Yeah.
Well, here's a case study. You go back to 2019, start of the 2019 season. It was a disappointing postseason for the Jets after they got all the way to the Western Conference Final in 2018 against Vegas.
Right.
They come back. They've lost Myers. We were at the draft and we're telling everyone the Canucks are going to sign Myers. Don't do it.
Yeah.
They lost Trouba. And then Byfuglien with his ankle and everything. They lost their entire right side of their D. But when they lost Byfuglien, they lost their spiritual animal, right? They lost a certain soul of the team and the fan base. It's only taken till now to right that. And if you saw the Jets last year and stuff, they had to get rid of Wheeler. They had to change some things. And they probably and then they had to get rid of Dubois, and they brought in the wrong people. Like the Jets could easily be way closer to what Buffalo is right now than they are to where they are now. Like they could have gone the entirely different way if they didn't take action. To your point, Russ, you've got to the team itself, like the management, has to figure out what's wrong, and they need those exit interviews. They need to understand what people are.
This is how I manage when I manage, Joe, in any business. Like, you have to look at all those things. Yeah. You may like, your assistant manager, but if everybody on staff hates that person, and guess what? You got to get rid of that person. Like, that's same thing with this coach.
This is the thing. As you said, Byfuglien was the spirit animal of the Jets. I don't know who the spirit animal of the Sabres is. I mean, if it's Rasmus Dahlin, he's okay. You've lost, Dahlin's making $11 million. You've signed more. You signed Owen Power to a 7-year deal. You signed Cousins and Thompson and Samuelson. So you've locked up your top 3D and your top 2 centers. You've got Skinner on a contract for a few more years. It was a bad contract for a couple years when Ralph Kruger screwed with his head, but he's going to score 30 goals like he always does. He does it in his sleep. Alex Tuck is effective, but there is not like that type of leader on this team that's going to run through.
Right. That's why you blame their drafting. A lot of times when I'm interviewing a kid, and a lot of times when teams are, when you're sort of interviewing your next future captain, like you just know it. You got that kid in there. Maybe he's not the most talented. Maybe he's not this or that, but the makeup is right. They haven't found that guy, Mike, and they haven't drafted him. Not every team can go get a Mark Messier and go win a cup. So you got to find that guy in the draft.
Well, and
they should have found them already. It's a little late now.
Well, some people think that's Zach Benson. Zach Benson, but it's tough to have a guy who's 5'9" and 170 pounds as your spiritual leader. He can be. I'm just saying because, and we'll get off the Sabres here. We want to talk a couple of other things before we end the show. But the thing is, the miscalculations on this team, I don't put it all on Granato, and Granato eventually might be the fall guy. The miscalculations on this team are squarely on the shoulders of Kevin Adams and we said this going back to last summer, Russ. They said they didn't go out and get a goaltender. What they did was they said Devin Levi is our guy. And now 45, 48, 50 games into the season, where is he? He's in Rochester because they weren't good enough. He's too young and he needs to play. Okay. Luukkonen has done pretty well. But their problem now is they can't score. So they can't win with a guy who's been a pretty decent goaltender for them this year. Instead of going out and trading for a Noah Hannafin or trading for a Brett Pesce or trading for one of the defensemen that was out there or signing a free agent that was somebody who could play in your top 4. Mm-hmm. They went out and signed Connor Clifton, who's a bottom pairing guy, not bad, but a bottom pairing guy, and a fading Eric Johnson, who's still a good player, but for 1 year, and he's probably going to retire after this year. Yeah. So what did that accomplish?
And what the other thing is, so like teams, if they don't have that really strong captain, sometimes have the goalie that's pretty much the captain, like Roberto Luongo, like Henrik Lundqvist. But when you got a kid in goal, he's not going to be that either. Right. So there's a lot of different ways that this roster construction has failed, and they all have to have to realize that they've all failed together. Because just because they haven't made the playoffs in 13 years doesn't mean they're making it next year.
Yeah, and
another 3 or 4 years.
I think the biggest mistake that they made. Because, okay, you can say Well, we were 1 point out of the playoffs and we scored 300 goals. So you know what? Let's bring everybody back. And what do? They re-signed Gergensen.
False equivalency.
They re-signed Tyson Yost. They brought the same group back.
Right. That's why you can't bring the same group back next year for management.
Exactly. And this is the point. Like, if you're saying we're 1 point out of the playoffs, you're looking at the problem wrong.
Right.
How many points were you away from being first? That's like, if your point is just get into the playoffs, you've got a bigger problem. Right. You should be thinking, how do we build a contending perennial challenger to the top spot in our division and conference?
Right.
That's what you should be doing.
I mean, look, if we
they'll all say yes, but to the point, right? Just sorry, Russ, just to cut you off. Okay. But to the point of saying, well, I only want to, well, we were 1 point off. We can get this, we can tweak a few things and off we go. Well, if you don't tweak those things, look where you are now. That was the risk.
Yeah, and the other thing is, even if they get better goaltending next year and score more goals, there's no guarantee they're making the playoffs next year.
Yeah, and now the moves that they should have made last summer in terms of trading from that prospect pool that has 4 first-round picks, Savoy, Ostlund, Kulik, Roseanne, who are all not in the NHL, but their value hasn't gone down. But now they're in I'd say a less fortuitous position because, they're going to finish right now. They're 12 points out of a playoff spot. They could finish 20 points out of a playoff spot. Where they are from now until where they need to go to make the playoffs. I don't know if you can make that jump based on what you're going to get for one of those prospects. They need to probably add 2 or 3 established players to get back to where they need to. And I don't know if you can do all that in one summer.
That's what I'm saying. Next year, it's almost like too big a job. So they need to have like a 2-year plan now, a 2-year mini plan to kind of get back into it, which I don't know if they're even trying to do.
Yeah. Well, it sure makes, like, the problem is if you're uncertain where you're going now and you're going to miss the playoffs, your planning starts now.
Right.
Because you need to get it locked down and you need to start showing change. Now might not be a bad time for a coaching change, just for the sake of change.
Yeah.
If you had someone out there.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. I mean, I'm not saying it's not justified, and Russ made some good points here, but reading the landscape of the Buffalo organization, there's no appetite to fire Don Granato, and I don't think there's any appetite to make him team president or anything like that. They signed him to an extension. It hasn't even kicked in yet.
Right. So what's their appetite for actually?
They like him as a coach. They think he's a good coach. They don't think that's the problem.
Right, but all they're doing is perpetuating mediocrity and not saying Granato. That's
so maybe the playbook then is you need to give a team. You got some cap space. You need to take an iffy salary at 50% for the right person to come in.
Right.
And give you some outside independent analysis for the last month and a half.
Well, apparently Doug McClain, now get this. Now, and I want to touch on one thing before we end the show after that. Doug McClain interviewed for a team president position with the Sabres back in 2020. I guess this is right around.
Right.
And apparently there was no appetite within the Sabres organization to hire a team president. They wanted a direct line of communication from the Pagulas to Kevin Adams, who is their hand-picked guy.
You can see that that's failed now. So.
Right. They went through Ted Black, who used to work in the Pittsburgh Penguins organization, Tim Murray, Pat LaFontaine, Jason Botterill. They fired Russ Brandon. They brought Kim Pagula, the wife of Terry Pagula, was the team president for a while. None of that's worked.
Here's the weird thing about sports. The weird thing about sports is a lot of it's trial and error. You can bring in guys that are known winners, but all kinds of things happen. Injuries happen. Players all of a sudden get old. Salary cap gets in the way. There's so many things. You can't plan for all of them. But what they're doing is just planning on another year of mediocrity. That's what they're doing.
I will die on this hill. Mm-hmm. But every organization needs a team president whose sole responsibility is to manage the owner and look out for their interests and be the owner whisperer. Yeah, that's really what your job is. And look at what Vancouver was until Jim Rutherford came in.
That's fair.
That is when you have an owner who has a lot of money and a lot of time, you get bad variables.
Yeah.
And like the last thing you want to be is the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL.
Yeah.
Right.
You just don't want it.
Because everybody pats everybody on the back, and they haven't won since the 90s.
Yeah.
All right.
Because the owner thinks he can be a GM.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He doesn't think
Or the owner's son.
He doesn't think he can be the GM in terms of Terry Pegula, but I do think he's a big fan, and he has had his hand in this team more than he has had the hand in the Bills, and the Bills have been a success, and the Sabres haven't. And he loves.
Terry Pegula needs to treat this as one of his failing businesses, and he needs to walk in there, and regardless of what he thinks and how much he may like some of the people in it, there's a decision to be made to get better. And it sounds like what you're saying is they're not going to make that decision. So if you're basing this all on personnel, they're not going to make the playoffs next year.
I don't know what the hockey equivalent of fracking is, but he's an oil guy, so I'm just. But we'll leave that to another time. Anyway, great show, guys. I had something else to talk about. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. For Pete Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.